Hello friends, Anderson here. Welcome to Kill 10 Rats Plays Ironsworn Chapter 2, Episode 20. Yes, we've made it to 20 and we're not quite done yet. But we're getting close. We are physically close to Arsula, the father of nightmares, but he wouldn't be the father of nightmares if we weren't, as we are physically approaching his trapped form, ourselves trapped in a nightmare. So that's pretty much where Kynan finds himself at the moment, and presumably Saskia too. Maybe we'll get to that later. But for now, we just know that with every step Kynan takes towards Arsula, he has to confront his personal horrors, his personal failings of the past, his worst moments. He has to go through them, relive them, and give us a chance to learn a little bit about his background and his past, because we have left that quite unexplored, as you do in a solo role-playing game where you leave yourself a lot of space, a lot of room to fill in the blanks as you play it, as the oracles prompt you. And that's exactly the point we've reached now. We have found Kynan of Bleakfrost, the outcast. We finally closed the circle back to our character creation video where we decided that Kynan was an outcast from a place somewhere in the western coast of the Ironlands. We've given it a name, Bleakfrost. We found that he has a sister called Rana, who is the thing, that's a horrible choice of words, who is the reason that ties Kynan to Hulata, his elven bond. And now we know why he has a bond with an elf. It's because of his sister who, well, fell in love with Hulata. And as this was uncovered and some misunderstanding was generated where the assumption is that Kynan sold off his sister to the elves and was seen conspiring with the elf, even though all he was doing was covering for his sister, that's why he was eventually outcast. Except, of course, in his nightmarish version of this, which isn't 100% accurate, everything is exaggerated. And also, things and people make appearances that don't quite make sense, such as Kaladas, who is back in our nightmare version of this occurrence, of this element of Kynan's past. And he's taken over the role of the village chief, and he's sitting in a throne to cast judgment over Kynan because he has his role to play. And this is where things get interesting, because we have, of course, decided that the things that happen in these dreams have some bearing on reality. So as before, as when Kaladas was here the first time in that dream sequence in the gloom, his consciousness is there again. We don't know how much of this he will remember when he wakes up, or whether he is 100% in tune with what is going on, but I think this is also sort of where Kaladas finds out that Kynan is still alive. Because I think Kaladas, up to the point where they had their nightmare encounter, and now that they have it again, the idea is finally starting to sink in that Kynan is out there, and that he's out for him, and that he's a danger coming closer who has some kind of connection to Kaladas. So we're also generating a bit of tension here, because now Kaladas will be turning from a very passive target of our vow to maybe in future chapters something of a more active pursuant and participant who might send, well, some hired help or some form of intervention to make sure that Kynan isn't able to go ahead with his revenge or to find out what Kaladas is really up to, because through this mutual connection, Kynan has also determined that Kaladas is trying to bring back those true rulers, those extra planner, former precursor people that were here. Whew, that was a lot to summarize, but I think that brings us up to speed to where we are now and what the situation is now, so let's jump on it. Kynan's words fail him as he looks at the figure sitting on the throne, where he, in his memory, in his muddled up perception now of what is true and what is a figment of, twisting around his actual memories of how his home was all those years ago, he expects there to be a different person on that chieftain's chair, but instead he sees his old and still current enemy, his nemesis, if you will, and he doesn't know what to say. And as Kaladas leads forward and informs him that we all have our roles to play, Kynan just stares at him agape as the villagers around him howl and throw things at him and spit and clamor for justice and some kind of resolution to what happened to Rana. And I think this is where we can give Kynan another chance to get a bit of a grip on the situation. We have reflected the spirit loss through this scene where Kaladas shows up and shocks him and just throws him off. And now, since we're still in a scene challenge here to escape the nightmare, and all we've accomplished so far is to put one tick on the countdown of 4, we want to face danger again to see if we can somehow become more of an active participant in this and get Kynan to rally a little bit and to focus on the fact that this doesn't make sense that Kaladas is there, and maybe confront that fact and generate some awareness that he's trapped in a nightmare and that he hasn't just in fact awoken from one, but that he has fallen into one. So I'm gonna face danger again with wits again, and we'll see where it goes. That looks good. We make some progress. 2 off, in fact, due to a strong hit. And this is actually an element of a scene challenge that I am unsure about, having recently reread the rules, because I think I might have done this wrong for the entirety of the playthrough pretty much so far. Because if I look at the rules as they are written, the moves are somewhat adapted, and as we generate a strong hit, all we do on a scene challenge face danger roll is to make progress. We don't actually, the way it looks here at least, generate any momentum. And I infer that from the fact that when we look at secure and advantage, it says on a strong or weak hit, apply the outcome as per the move. So the moves are somewhat altered. I've just overlooked this, so I'm not going to take the momentum here. I'm just going to take the progress. And we're going to go with this altered version, even though I think, if memory serves, in Starforged, it's reverted again and the momentum actually is added. But we're going to do Ironsworn until Starforged becomes a bit more, well, I'd say ingrained in my brain, so I can differentiate the two a little bit more. I'm going to rely on the rules as written before I make any amalgamations. So I'm not going to take the momentum. Anyway, strong hit. So Kynan manages to get some semblance of control back out of the fact that this does not make sense, that Kaladas is not the chief. And as he hears him say, we all have our roles to play, Kynan, the realization sinks in that this might not be entirely what it seems. So he's starting to see the cracks in this version of reality that he's currently in. And the way this manifests in his perception of the scene is that he, as he looks around wide-eyed at the circle of villagers around him, he occasionally sees like a face blur and shift as the version of reality adapts to his expectation, and he suddenly sees a face where he remembers, oh wait, this person passed away before this happened, and then it corrects again and there's a different face there. All of a sudden he looks back and there still is Kaladas leaning forward and looking at him and smiling a little bit. Ah, so you are catching on, Kynan. How did you find yourself here? What enemy did you make now? And he pauses for a second and stares off into the distance. Do you even know what you are up against? And he catches himself and strokes his beard. How intriguing. I have said these words to you before, but I have no memory of it. Not entirely. And Kynan finds himself in that dreamlike state where he hears Kaladas's voice very, very clearly, even though there is a din of noise and angry people around him, but they're almost like a background loop of some kind that is very repetitive and muffled, and where the voices are just coming through, almost like he's underwater and hears the shouting above. And all he hears clearly is Kaladas, and he also finds himself remembering that first encounter now, briefly flashes on this and realizes, wait, this is... when did I meet this? I know who he is now, and I understand we have had a standoff in a similar dream-like state, and so he gets the chance again to fight back against the dream, to make sense of it. The same way Kaladas is doing right now, because Kaladas also catches on by repeating the words he's already said in the first encounter. He catches on that he's saying them again, and it's starting to sink in that he is also trying to become more lucid in this whole scene, because I think he has sort of pushed that first encounter out of his memory. I think it's not entirely clear to him up until this point that Kynan was alive, but if Kynan fails a few more times, I think Kaladas will retain that memory, especially if we roll some kind of negative match here or something. I'll put that one into the category of things I should not be saying right before I roll Face Danger, because now I will roll Face Danger plus Wits again. It's not a miss, it's a weak hit, which means we lose one countdown progress, but we also make one progress. So, do we... Minor complication or delay is what it says, but not paying the price. So I think this does not necessarily warrant Kaladas becoming aware of it, but I think maybe this is a reflection of, probably another scene change to disorient Kynan further, because he wakes up again. This time on a cot on the stone floor. Doesn't even deserve the name, it's just some straw, soil and filthy on the hard, cold, stamped earth of an underground level under the longhouse of the village chief of Bleakfrost, and it's a temporary holding cell where they keep their prisoners. They don't jail people for an extended period of time, they either sentence and execute the sentence or they banish, but this is the holding cell, and Kynan is disoriented as he wakes up and thinks he had another dream that rattles him, but he remembers that now they dragged him in front of the chief and they must have had counsel, but a decision has not been reached. He doesn't quite remember addressing the court or the council of his peers and elders, but he remembers why he's here, why they locked him up here for the next round of interrogation or the next round of deliberation, as he is now accused of selling his sister to, well, the elves. And he hears a commotion outside, and the heavy door that blocks all light from entering this room that's only illuminated by a thin sliver up in the very top of the outer wall that lets in a little bit of light from the outside. Door opens and Kaladas walks in again. I remember now. You were in Ameshki. You were tangling with the father of nightmares. What an ill-advised course of action. I am disappointed in you, Kynan. And Kynan again has that feeling of vertigo as things are being said to him by somebody that is completely out of place, but it still triggers a memory for him. That's sort of our reflection of the positive aspect of this, the success part, where he gets reminded of Arsula, but it's also a bit of a negative aspect as Kaladas gets reminded of the same, and he's also about to catch on to the fact that, well, if he starts having these strange visions of Kynan and some founded insights into a conflict between Kynan and Arsula, that means Kynan's still alive. So let's face danger one more time. That's another strong hit, which means that I think we can shed some more light on the background aspect of Kynan here, since this is about his sister and Hulata. And one thought I had between the last recording session and this one is that I do like drilling out these parallels to some extent. So I like this serendipity of rolling a name for Kynan's sister that's in the same naming oracle column of Erin, who is also somebody who had a relationship with a firstborn, with an elf. And as I was thinking about the nature of the relationship, I was thinking maybe there's a parallel here as well, in a sense that maybe there is also a child. There is an equivalent to Asha that is Kynan's niece or nephew. And that brought me to the question, which I think we can explore now, of is Rana still alive? Because we do have another free bond slot that we can allocate. But I don't want to make assumptions, because I can also think of many scenarios where Kynan's entire life gets a lot more complicated if Rana isn't alive anymore and he has nobody to contradict this story that he sold her to the elves, when in reality maybe she passed away in childbirth or something like that. And that leaves the question of what happened to the child, but we'll get to that when we determine what happened. So let's maybe first, now that we have another scene to flash back on, ask the Oracle, is Rana still alive? I don't know whether I find that likely or unlikely, so I'll leave it up to 50-50. And in a 51 plus range, we'll say she's still alive. 39. Okay, she's no longer alive. Which means, well, for the moment it means nothing. It means that Kynan has managed to escape from the imprisonment. Somehow. It's hazy. He is running towards the forest edge, through the snow, deep snow outside of Bleak Frost. He's running up the hill. He's running up an incline towards the forest edge and trying to gain some distance between Bleak Frost that he's sure he'll never be able to enter again on pain of death. And he's trying to get to the meeting point that he had determined with Hulata when things were looking dire. He doesn't know at this stage what has become of Rana. He reached out with the elves and had a meetup with Hulata. They told him about the fever that she was running and that she had not coped well with the aftermath of giving birth to her half-elven child. And as he runs, he has that sense of doom and foreboding again, that gnawing, that knowledge of foregone conclusion, and he flashes on a very clear idea of a memory that he has, even though the event is clearly in his future from where he's running now. And he sees that impassive mask, Hulata's individualized face replacements, where the elves do not show you their true faces, and hearing the voice hollow behind the muffling barrier of the mask informing him that his sister had passed away. And he remembers the elf holding a bundle and informing Kynan that we need to roll up a name. So let's quickly do that. We shall roll up an elven name and an Ironlander name, because I think Hulata will have given the child an elven name. So let's go with that first. 90 Ereshki. And that makes it Kynan's niece, because I just randomly flip around my idea of like 50 below is male, 51 plus is female. Sometimes it's the opposite. It's just to mix it up a little bit, and a match is always non-binary. And so Ereshki is her elven name, and what is her Ironlander name? 33, Mila or Sidan. I think Mila is good. So we have Mila / Ereshki, who is the child. So we know now that Hulata is of the opinion, as insinuated in the scene previously, that
she cannot stay with us. Be reasonable. You must take her.
I'm cast out, barely able to fend for myself. How would I care for a child?
Better than we ever could. We are the wandering ones. Have you no relatives elsewhere?
And maybe that's our third bond slot, actually. Maybe that is what Kynan did. There is a distant, physically distant, but close relation of his that is the point of contact where Kynan went with Mila after he parted ways with Hulata, and where he brought the child to care, and he would, same as Hulata probably, periodically check in and leave funds and supplies and make sure that everything's taken care of. I'm currently picturing this to be somewhere in the center north of the Ironlands, a bit closer to where Kynan had his stomping grounds when he was in Morgan/Calidas's band. And that's also why I shoehorned a little bit this sort of wandering one background for Hulata, because I figure he's a Bond person where it makes sense that he is somebody we can encounter almost anywhere in the Ironlands, because his elven family conglomerate is more like an association of displaced wandering elves. They do not have a clear territory anymore, so they're a bit like the Dalish elves in Dragon Age. They're just travelers, effectively. So we know that Kynan next, after he escaped from Bleakfrost and got the child handed to him by Hulata, this child Ereshki/Mila, went to another settlement, which is somewhere in the north-ish of the Ironlands, north of the Havens, and we'll roll up a name for this. That's a 45. It is named after a creature, and what is the name in detail? 78 Elder Watch. Okay, that sounds like a little too ominous for what I thought it might turn out. Okay, so Kynan brought Mila to Elder Watch. Now, who is this last remaining Bonds person that Kynan is somehow related to, that he trusts enough to bring Mila to, and who would actually also do this for him? So somebody who is related to both of them. Maybe another outcast? That might make sense. Somebody from Kynan's immediate family who was also outcast. Let's roll up a name. 06 gives us Keone or Glyn. I have a man in mind here, so it's Glyn. Maybe he's an uncle or an elder brother, or... Let's see what characteristics we get here and what the character role is. So let's get Glyn a character role. 77, Glyn is a warrior. Maybe not an outcast, maybe more somebody who left. Maybe another Ironsworn who settled down. Maybe that's how Kynan became Ironsworn. Because he might not have been, he wasn't at the time when he leaves Bleakfrost, but he follows in the footsteps of his... Yeah, let's make it an uncle. So it's Kynan's uncle. Probably older brother of his father's or mother, and went off, had an iron vow-filled life, and then settled down in Elder Watch in some prominent role, or maybe not so prominent role. We probably can infer that from the character descriptor and the character goal. So let's go with the character goal. 84, gain knowledge. Okay, he set out to find something out. Is this maybe also then where Kynan's idea of delving into ruins comes from? Was he following in the footsteps of Glyn here? Let's get a second goal to make it a bit more tangible. 68, protect the status quo. Combined with the name of the settlement, Elder Watch, maybe there is even something to Glyn where he has more of an idea than what is actually going on than perhaps even Kynan has in relation to the true rulers of the Ironlands or something. Maybe he had some kind of experience as a young man down in the south on the coast in Bleakfrost that made him want to travel and pursue this knowledge. And he settled in Elder Watch because there is something near Elder Watch that he is settled in to study. And protect the status quo is both the status quo in the Ironlands, but also, to my mind, maybe the status quo of his position in Elder Watch. So he's a prominent person in Elder Watch. And he has now, for the last 15, 20 years, presumably, we expect it to be maybe more like 20 years, raised half-elven Ereshki/Mila in Elder Watch occasionally receiving visits from Hulata and Kynan. And that's who we assume Kynan went to after this encounter. So as he's bounding up the incline, all of that is flashing like a jumble of desynchronized memories that are remembering the future sort of memories, flashing through Kynan's nightmare-trapped mind, and he gets to face danger again. Yep, shouldn't have said anything. There it is. Okay, there's our third mark on the progress, on the countdown rather. So one more and we are done. We have failed. We have a negative connotation to this, and I think this negative connotation is now one I very much was hoping to get actually, which is that Kynan is now on the radar of Kaladas. Kaladas remotely understands, or has maybe already understood now, that Kynan is still alive. He's a loose end, one of the few that can probably connect the dots between who Kaladas really is and that he's not who he seems to be, that he's not a kindly prophet kind of fellow. I think in terms of what that means on a game mechanic level is maybe we can use the threat mechanics in the next story arc that we pursue. So we have a power-hungry mystic or a scheming leader table here, where we can introduce this as a threat attached to the vow to prevent the return of the elder people, of the precursors. So I'm going to make a note of that on the character sheet. And the note I made in my wonderful handwriting that you can probably not read is that threat Kaladas is aware and works against Kynan in terms of this vow to prevent the return of the true rulers. And I think he can also infer that Kynan is wanting to take revenge, so find Kaladas and make him pay his background vow. That's also then affected by this threat. But I don't think Kaladas really cares too much about himself, more so than the rulers returning. So that is the negative outcome now. That from now on we have this threat hanging over this vow to get rid of our tormented affliction. And our price to pay, yeah, it's gonna have to be spirit endure stress again. Getting lucky there, I would say, so we can bounce back one and drop another momentum down, but that's okay. And this manifests in a very exhausted, road-weary Kynan who has managed to make his way to Elder Watch, managed to convince the gate guard to let him into this secluded settlement even well after sundown, as he has made this last leg of his journey with Mila on his own. Even though he has managed to find company on the way, he has attached himself to a caravan, which made it a lot easier to care for the child, but he has now done a half-day's hike from where he split off from the caravan that was not going into this trajectory, and he's reached Elder Watch. He's walking through the village to the house that has been pointed out to him as Glyn's house, and he knocks on the door.
I assume it is a waste of my time to inquire how you made it out alive when so many others did not. But I take it that you are alive. What other foolish notions do you have in your head now, Kynan? Are you satisfied picking a fight with an elven elder, or do you have other things in mind?
And Kynan stumbles back, all of a sudden realizing he doesn't have the child in his hand anymore, and looking at his own hands, they seem more worn and aged, and he's not, as he looks up, confronting Kaladas in Elder Watch anymore. They're in a lightless cave somewhere in the far, far north, in a place that almost no other Ironlander has been before. And as he looks down, he sees the corpse of Siora spread out in front of him, and he feels that shudder of doom ringing through him again. And as he looks up again, Kaladas is standing much farther away now on a balcony-like protrusion with an actually crafted parapet around it in an architectural design that Kynan attributes to a precursor site, and he remembers, yes, this was the site, this was the prize that Kaladas wanted, that he made us go to, where it all went wrong, and where Siora died, even though Kynan now recalls, like, he's never seen her corpse, because he ran away before she sacrificed herself. But now in this scene, he's just confronted with this image of his failure. Kaladas now in the far distance, making it impossible for him to even respond to him. But he gets that sense of dread that he's being spoken to in a way that is not just a part of this dream, and he's very aware now that it's a dream. And he feels that urge of trying to force himself to wake up, so we'll have another face danger here to see if we can get, or do I make the progress roll now? See, I don't even want to pursue this on the level of mechanics or likelihoods. It's more from a narrative momentum. I feel like this is about as good as it's going to get for Kynan to work it out on a fictional level that he's in a dream. And now he's got the chance to break out of it. And even if it's only a 6 progress chance, we're gonna make the progress resolution of the scene challenge roll now. And see how it goes. What a lucky son of a gun. So that's actually a strong hit. So it's a blessing and a curse. The realization that Kaladas is now aware is going both ways, and it also triggers Kynan to snap out of it and see before him what there is in front of him. And all of a sudden this cave that he sees in front of him is still a cave, but that shape of Kaladas up on the balcony is actually the withered form of an elf hanging in a tangle of roots not too far away. And he sees 3 other shapes coming towards him, now broken out of the stasis of their ritual, and he looks to the side to see whether his companions are there. Is Neda there? Is Saskia there? And in what state are they? And well, to answer that, I think we need to play out Saskia's scene challenge next time, because that's something I also wanted to take the opportunity to do. Here's her character sheet. I scaled her down a little bit since Kynan also beat her, so I figure that's realistic to make her a little bit weaker than him, especially since I also like the standard stat array a lot more than the perilous one I chose for Kynan. I'll go into why at some point in the retrospective, but we're going to have a similar background exploration encounter with Saskia as well. So we don't know what her background vow is, we may find out, but we know that she has the vow to find Asha and keep her safe, and she has the same progress as Kynan. She's in a good shape, and she too has to escape the nightmare, and she's gonna do that next time. So thank you very much for watching, I'll catch you then, and bye for now.